We're in the midst of a series on relationships that we're going to continue for the next few weeks here. As we think about what Jesus came to teach us about relating to one another and about how we're, as his people, his believers, to live out the kingdom around those that we interact with on a daily basis. Now, I'm sure if you lived at all, you've had some people who have been friends that have turned out to be jerks. Some who only think of themselves, unhealthy people who want you to be a part of their relationship only to benefit them. There are friends that you may have had who talked behind your back and caused you all kinds of difficulties. There are people who want to be first and who are glad that you are second. You've known those kind of friends. I could go on because you've experienced all kinds of people who have been friends. And maybe, hopefully, there are people that you've maybe chosen not to be friends with at the moment. Jesus knows about friendship and about relationships so incredibly well. And one day Jesus is talking with his disciples about how to live in this kingdom that he brought to earth and that he was showing to all of the folks, about his kingdom and about how relationships, friendships are supposed to work. He'd already had talked to them by this point and said things like, I and the Father are one. Kind of showing them this relationship that he has, this perfect relationship with his Father in heaven. It was hard enough for them to try to understand that relationship and to be able to understand what he was saying when he said, I and the Father are one. They're trying to figure out how this can be. They're trying to figure out how is this person that is standing in front of them, God, who probably for most of them had been somebody that was out there, an entity far away, an entity somehow that they sought to live their lives in order to please. So they probably struggled with trying to figure out how do you worship the God that is standing right in front of them. They probably knew, as they discovered and they walked with Jesus, that they were supposed to serve him, that they were supposed to honor him, they were supposed to lift him up high. And yet having this person who was God before them had to be difficult. They learned to listen to Jesus. They learned to serve him in all kinds of ways. They hold him up in high esteem, even though all of this is confusing to them. After all, he says he's God and he's supposed to be God, so how are we supposed to treat the God that is in front of us? His disciples must have wondered. After all, most of the ones that he had gathered with him had been those who had been raised in the Jewish tradition, Jewish faith. People in the Jewish faith, they weren't even able to pronounce the name Yah. Can't do that. The name Yahweh. Or they believed that if they ever actually saw God face to face, that somehow they would die. So can you imagine what it's like when Jesus finally said, I and the Father are one, indicating that he was God standing in front of them. It was a relationship that had to be incredibly new, surprising, and difficult. Because in Jesus' time, even today, people tend to worship foreign gods in the high places. Back then, they would sacrifice animals. They would even sacrifice children. They would burn incense. They would construct idols. They would engage in all kinds of sexual immorality in order to worship the gods. They would even worship the emperor, the Roman emperor. If they didn't, things would happen to them. They made idols of stone and metal. They would practice divination. They would engage in fertility cults and all kinds of things, somehow doing all of that, believing that somehow the gods out there would look favorably upon them and to provide for their family. All of it to appease these gods that were out there. Some people still do that today. But Jesus is different. And that's why it was hard for his disciples to understand who he in fact is. And so it was difficult one day when he says to them, "My command is this, that you love each other as I love you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends," which Jesus knew he was going to do very, very shortly for them and for the whole world and for us. Why would Jesus do this, they were wondering? Or should we really, is he asking us to do that for our friends? And then in the midst of trying to figure out all of this, okay, there's God, you're Jesus, you're God, we're supposed to love one another like you love us and give up our lives. Trying to balance all of those kinds of things. Jesus says something to follow up that command, that for us, when I say it, you're going to go, well, of course. It's just the way things are. It's the way we've always heard it. But for them, when Jesus said these next words, it would have blown them away. It was something so radical, so unconventional, so uncomfortable, so unbelievable that when Jesus says it, I wasn't there, but I would assume that they were just speechless. They would start looking at each other going like, did you just hear what he said? Do we believe what he just said? These are what he said. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. When you were growing up, probably you sang songs about Jesus being your friend. You've probably grown up with that idea that I have a friend in Jesus. But for them, that was something that would have been so unsettling, so new, so incredible, that I can only imagine what the conversation that day must have been like. Peter, did I hear Jesus say that he's our friend? Can't be. Andrew, did you hear that? You know, it must be these hearing aids that I got from Nazareth yesterday. They're just not hearing things right. Is he saying like we're supposed to be, us like Jesus and us, we're supposed to be like intimate friends? Kind of intimate friends like you and us, Peter, and all. Okay, well, we're guys. We don't like do intimate relationships real well. All the ladies in our lives, we do those really, really well. But did he really think about, like, we're supposed to be a friend with God? And more than that, he is our friend? No, I don't think so. Nobody ever in all of creation has ever been a friend of God. Worshipper? Yes. Bow down in reverence? Yes. Hold them up in holy esteem? Yes. Hope we can satisfy God and maybe get to heaven? Yes. Be their servant? Yes. But friend? There's no way. Because if that's true, if what Jesus just said is true, then we have a relationship with Jesus that is totally unlike, never been before, completely different than any one of us, how we have related to a God, our God, before. Guys, did you hear what he said? Can this really be true? Nah, can't be. He's God. You don't treat God like a friend. You see, you probably grew up as I did, as I said, thinking, Jesus is my friend. But it's a remarkable kind of thing when you think about it. Because when Jesus says that he is our friends and calls us his friends, it bridges this huge gap between the incredible creator of all things, this God of everything. It transforms and draws together this distant, authoritative view of who God is. It's the way every religion up until that point, and even religions today, Islam and others, appear and hope that somehow this distant God out there will look kindly on us and will accept us someday. It transforms this gap and brings that God to us. And when Jesus said it to those disciples on that day, it was something that had never been heard in all of history. It was a unique, sacrificial, this deep intimacy that God wants to have with us. This unconditional acceptance of you and me and those guys who are sitting around the Lake of Galilee. Up to this point, God had always been a relationship of a dedicated service or kind of distant, unconnected reverence. But Jesus changed that day when he was sitting with those folks. It's different. A servant doesn't know what his master is doing. But Jesus said, God wants you to know him so well that you know every part of him and that there's nothing surprising about him. Do you still revere him and celebrate and worship him? Yes. But he's no longer distant and out there and unknown. He is to be known and loved and to be your friend. In John 15, Jesus uses the word philos, Greek word, which refers to a dear friend or a beloved companion or trusted confidant. He uses those words that for those guys and the people who were following Jesus, they would have never put that with the God that they knew or thought they knew and this together. It signifies this kind of close, intimate, often indicating a shift from being a servant now to being in the room, to being connected with this informed friend of yours. This friendship is considered so remarkable and amazing because Jesus explicitly redefines his relationship with us. Do we continue to serve him? Yes. But we do it because he is our friend. There are things that you would tell people who are your friends, intimate details about your life that you're not willing to tell somebody else. And then this is what Jesus is saying. It's, I'm going to share the intimate details of who I am, and you're going to do that with me because we are now friends. Jesus wants us to know the intimate heart of the Father and to know that he cares about every intimate detail of your personal life and mine. Why? Because Jesus said a friend is willing to lay down their life, is willing to give themselves to others in order to make that friendship bond that God has always done with us. Now, Jesus talks about these relationships because, again, he wants us to work on making those happen. Probably knowing that some of us do them well and some of us have struggled at times making relationships work. You and I have mental pictures of the kind of friend that we would like to have or the friends that we want to be around. We know what kind of people we like to be around. And so the rest of the message today is really not about a plan to make the people around you who you might consider friends. It's not about making them different. Because one of the things that Jesus was doing that day when he was talking to the folks was he was trying to help those disciples become something different than what they were. And he wanted them to understand that he was intimately connected with them in order to help them to grow to be the kind of friends with each other and ultimately with others around them. So, I want to talk about, as we kind of finish out the message today, not about what kind of friends should you choose. What kind of friends should you look for? No. But what kind of friend is Jesus saying, is Paul saying, that you can be in order to be the kind of friend that Jesus would want us to be? Because Jesus is always more concerned about our becoming that which shows Jesus, rather than us finding the right friend out there. So, it was years later, Paul, follower of Jesus, was trying to help his congregation be good friends with one another. And so he's speaking words to them to say, now, keep these things before you. Keep these things in your mind and in your heart as you seek to be the kind of friend that you would want to be. You would want to have others. And so Paul is writing to his church in Rome. In the 12th chapter, he has a whole list of things. I sometimes like reading one of those and going like, okay, I'm going to work on that today or this week. I'm going to be that kind of friend. The list is long. I'm going to read a part of them. You know what real friendship looks like? Paul says, this is it. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope. Be patient in affliction. Faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need, and practice hospitality. I get to that point and I go, wow, that's a lot. But he goes on. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who are mourning. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Paul continues to go on and on and on to encourage his people. This is the kind of thing that Jesus was teaching about us. If we're to be a friend of Jesus and Jesus our friend, this is how he wants us to live. This is the kinds of things that we're working toward. It's an incredible passage. And I want to, we could be here all afternoon. We're not. But I would just want to highlight a few of these that as I read through those, I thought, oh, gosh, those are things that I need to work on. Maybe there's others, if you read this passage, there's ones that you go, gosh, that's one I need to work on. But here are some that kind of highlighted for me. One, I want to be a friend who extinguishes evil. I want to be a friend who celebrates the good and tries to extinguish the evil that's going on. Again, what Paul said is love must be sincere. Hate, am I supposed to hate? Yeah, you can hate evil. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. I was thinking about how I describe that. I want to be kind of a one-faced person who hates what is evil and clings and is attracted to what is good. Whenever there's a situation that arises, there's always an opportunity to be able to celebrate the evil, the bad that's going on. It happens all the time. You just turn the TV on, you listen to any kind of media. There's few positive, good things being said at all about people. I want to be a person who celebrates the good. Not neglecting or acknowledging that there is evil, but I want to be able to celebrate the good. When gossip happens, when people begin to say things to other people, it just continues to escalate. And I just get really tired of being around everybody who's offended by something. Do you? I want to be somebody who celebrates where there is good and to lift that up. Becoming the kind of friend who can kind of de-escalate conflict. Not the kind of friend who hears something and begins to stir things up in order to get people going, but to kind of put a lid on a pot that's boiling so that the fire can go out. Not pouring gasoline, not putting anything else on it, but trying to extinguish that. So as I was reading these words of Paul this week, I had the question, so Eric, and I ask you, are you an extinguisher or a fanner of a flame? Good friends are people who are sincere, Paul says, Jesus would say, who hate evil and do whatever they can to celebrate the good. Secondly, I want to be a person who is, as I said, kind of one-faced. I want to be devoted, it says in the scriptures, Paul says, be devoted to one another. Honor one another above yourselves. A multiple-faced kind of person is really not a good friend, right? They talk about this here with you about something, and they talk about you against somebody else. The first part says that we must be sincere. We must be sincere in this relationship, and the word in Greek really means that we are not phony, that we're not hypocrites, that we don't have hidden agendas, we don't try to bring up things around other people. We want people who are always going to have our backs, who are going to be there, and there'll be no surprises around there. Sometimes they're going to speak to us in love. Sometimes friends are going to say things that are going to be difficult. But be devoted to one another and honor one another above yourselves. I can learn to move out of God's love for me into the flow of life and to be honest and true and caring for those around me. I'm not looking for acceptance in a relationship. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago because you are greatly loved. It's my responsibility to love others and to treat everybody with respect and love. Third, what Paul says is share with God's people who are in need and practice hospitality. I want to be an open-handed kind of person. When I can offer that which is needed, I want to be that kind of person. And Paul says to be a friend, that is what you do. Now, there are a lot of you in this place that pray really well, and that's a great gift. I find myself falling in at times with people who have something going on, and I say, well, I will pray for you, which I do. But then I think there are these times when prayer, though it does tons, that there's something else that I need to do, an action, a response, a caring, a call, something else beyond just praying. There are people around us who need us to show up for them. They need people to just be there for them. It's the kind of friend that I want to be when there's a need around us. When I have a need, I would love to have somebody come by or somebody call and just say, hey, let's have lunch together. Some kind of tangible something that says, I love you and I'm your friend. I want my tangible hands and my feet to be moved in action, to be open-handed to people where there's specific needs beyond just prayer. And again, prayer is so, so, so important. Fourth, as I was reading through this, it seems like one of the things Paul says is, bless those who persecute you. Bless them and do not curse. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but do what's right in the eyes of the Lord. Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave it for God, who will repay. And I thought, I want to be a friend who, no matter what the chaos or what the conversation is, I want to seek to be one step above the fray of all of the things that are going on. I don't want to be the one who continues to stir up things. I remember a coach of mine long ago said these words, "You know what, Eric? You don't have to show up to every fight that you're invited to." So when somebody says something to you, stirs something up, you can decline the invitation. Guess what? I'm just not going to step into that right now. Thanks for the invitation, but I'm going to politely keep going on with what I'm doing, and I'm not going to engage with that right now. I'm just going to politely withdraw from this. When we can be completely tripped up and distracted and diverted by the invitation that our emotions grab into so quickly with things going on, and somebody else wants us to be a part of that kind of conversation in order to escalate it again. Thanks. I'm just going to keep going on. I'm not going to hate you or have power over you or whatever. I'm just not going to jump into it at this point. And some people say, but. What Paul says, interestingly enough, right? He says, "Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave it for God who will repay." Whatever it is that emotionally I carry in here about the people who have hurt me or have struggled with me, for me to keep jumping in on that doesn't help me at all and may not help the situation. If somebody has ever done something wrong to you, Paul's saying, work to be at peace in that situation and allow God to deal with that person as they need to. Fifth and last, and again, there's a lot. I'd encourage you to read this because there's things that you can pick up in there and go, I'm going to work on that this week. I want to be a friend, as Paul's challenges. I want to be a friend who seeks to make peace. Again, I've kind of said that of rising above the fray and doing all of those things. But he says, live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. The truth is, in most relationship conflicts or struggles, the first place to start resolving that trouble is where? It's with me. It's with you. It's not trying to change the other person. It's not trying to tell them, hey, you did this and this and this and this and this. Part of it, Paul says, is try to live in harmony. You don't have to accept what they do. But Jesus has the power to change them. You don't. I don't. If I can understand that I can be changed when I get drawn into certain things, I will not be able to live in harmony or peace with other people. But Jesus says that if I can invite him, who is my friend, who knows me well, and who knows all the things that are going on in me, if I can invite Jesus to settle in my heart a sense of peace in those situations, then I will either be able to rise above the fray and step back, or I'll be able to be much wiser in how I respond to what's around me. People can ridicule you and me, say all kinds of things about you that you may not like and may not be true. But Paul says, don't step into that. Keep short accounts of people. Resolve things quickly. Extend grace. Seek to de-escalate wherever you can. Have an open hand to offer goodness, God's goodness to people. Harboring all of that to you to give to them. Will be the kind of friend that Jesus says works well in this world. It's not what you experience lots of times, but it is what Jesus wants to happen. And remember, Paul again is talking to his congregation, right? I mean, when we begin to talk about how you relate to the world and to people who are not believers and all of that, that's probably a different kind of thing that we need to talk about. But here he's talking about all of these in Romans 12. Among people who you associate with, who are believers, this is how he wants us to interact and to act. Because Jesus understands friendship better than anyone. So, we're going to share communion in just a moment. I don't know if you are in need of a friend today who understands you completely. I don't know if you need a friend today to help you, whatever it is that you're struggling with, or conflict, or whatever it is that can lift you up above the fray of what's going on. The truth is, and we've said this through this whole series, you can never be the kind of friend, I can never be the kind of friend that really works well unless we seek Jesus to help us with that. Because our emotions and our past experiences always get in the way and derail us in all kinds of ways. Every person in here today, everybody who's listening online, your life can be revolutionized by connecting with Jesus. So, I invite you in a moment to come to his table because you're his friend. He would feed you. Friends feed one another and care for one another and love one another and encourage one another. And that's what he wants to do for you. At whatever level, whatever it is you're dealing with, he invites you to come. It's why on the night when he was betrayed, the night when he was going to have people deny him and turn away from him, he took bread. And he said, you know, you're not perfect, but in my giving of my body for you, this is what a friend does. They rise above the fray, and they come to you and they offer to you that which is what you need the most, because that's what an intimate friend does. They just don't give words that somehow don't connect with your heart, but they come and they care and they love. And that's what this meal was about for them and for us. It was after supper, he said, I want to remind you. Again, this is the cup, which is the new covenant of how we're going to relate to each other. And I give this to you. You take it in my sacrifice and my giving to you because I'm your friend. I love you. And that's what friends do for each other. And so I invite you to come, to be welcomed by the Jesus who is your friend, who knows you even better than you know yourself probably, and who wants you to be loved and to have this intimate, connected friend who is always there for you. If you don't know him, never accepted him as a friend, this is the time to do it because he waits for you.